The destruction on Sunday night of a derelict post office and general store at Mount White was the latest in an all too familiar pattern of fires in the neighbourhood. The town has a number of vacant buildings and vandalism is rife, but the fires only started a few weeks ago. When the old schoolhouse was destroyed on April 28, residents had their suspicions. So did police, but scientific analysis failed to find a cause. 24 hours later, fire brigades were called to nearby Calga, where a weekender had gone up in flames. This time, police detected traces of an accelerant used to start the blaze, but there was no reason to connect it with the schoolhouse fire. The destruction of the post office, just a few hundred metres from the burnt-out shell of the school, is more than coincidence.
The Blues second rower has until Saturday to reach full fitness. The league's confident he'll be right for Origin number 2, but it's not taking any chances, putting no less than 4 players on standby. Don Ferner says Sargent is one of those, but Sarge is in the dark.
I haven't heard anything official. I heard on the radio this morning they had Les Davidson on standby, but I wasn't aware that they had a number of players.
Meanwhile, the latest issue of Rugby League Week has gone hard on the head-high tackle furor. Sargent features for this tackle on Canberra's Gary Coyne.
As you say, there's a fairly damning photograph of me in the League magazine this weekend, but I wasn't aware that the tackle was that bad.
His front row partner Paul Harrigan comes in for a basting as well for the now infamous Larson tackle, but Sargent's message to the media is fair go.
You know, once a matter's laid to rest, that's where it belongs, I suppose.
Police found the human skeleton under the Nelson Bay Road at Cox's Lane on Monday after council workers accidentally came across the bones while widening the road. They were confident of making an early identification. Using jewellery, clothing and dental records, they were able to confirm the woman's name this afternoon.
Inquiries by the police have revealed the remains found under the road bridge at Fullerton Cove are those of Debbie Ray Pritchard. She was 24 years old when she was last seen outside the Palais Royal nightclub in Newcastle at 1 p.m. on Sunday the 7th of March in 1982.
The disappearance of Debbie Pritchard sparked a massive hunt involving more than 30 police over several weeks. They focused their search on bushland near Whitebridge, south of the city, acting on information from a taxi driver who recalled taking a couple to that area.
The cab driver then conveyed the girl and the passenger to this point here, where she alighted from the cab and paid the $5 fare.
Clothing similar to that worn by Debbie Pritchard was also found under the Stockton Bridge. At the time, the missing woman's parents made public pleas for assistance in the hope that their daughter was alive. The parents were too distressed to speak publicly today. Meanwhile, police have returned to their files in a bid to take full advantage of a chance find that may never have emerged.
Well, Homicide Police and Mayfield Police, who are working on the case, will be going over all the materials accumulated earlier in the thing. That will include re-interviewing witnesses, etc.
So it's going to basically be quite a long inquiry from this point?
I think it would be. They'll want to touch all the bases and check all the facts, yes.
Tom Hilston, NBN News.
State Labor MPs Bryce Gaudry and John Mills met with two Cuban trade union officials this morning. Australian supporters hope to send a container of wheat flour and milk powder to Cuba later this year. The Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries were Cuba's main trading partners. But as communism crumbled in those countries, so too did the trade agreements between them and Cuba. The United States has intensified its trade sanctions against this remaining communist regime.
Overnight, this agreement that we had was stopped, and that has meant a serious drop in the amount of milk that is available in Cuba.
But it's not just milk. Food, textiles and oil are all in short supply. The delegation will meet with Trades Hall Council tomorrow. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It was all over the use of the cinders and wood chip training tracks. The NJC wanted to introduce a fee of 80 cents per gallop on the tracks. The trainers offered 50 and a stalemate resulted. But after earnest discussion between both parties, it was agreed the Trainers Association will pay the NJC a fee of $3,000 a month and collect the fees from their members themselves. As a result, everyone is happy. And only praise from Jockey Club Secretary John Curtis in the professionalism shown by the Trainers Association during the dispute.
They're only for probably one or two minor incidents which didn't get out of hand, thankfully, and I think once you start slamming doors in people's faces, well, you go nowhere very fast. And in the last 12 months or so, I'm proud to say that we've always had a very good association with the trainers, and that will continue.
Coached by the Newcastle Knights conditioner Mark Wright, St Francis Xavier opened superbly. The first try seemed to be from a knock-on, but on replay McKell's quick thinking paid dividends and the college was in. Soon after, the centre was in again. And again as the ball went wide, McKell was on the spot for his hat-trick. St Francis were going forward relentlessly. McKell stretched the defence for Craig Wise to cross. $20-0 at half-time, and soon after the resumption, hooker Nathan Ison put the issue beyond doubt with another four-pointer, and the St Francis Xavier College were steamrolling their way to a 36-0 victory.
Each year, about 600 children in Australia develop either meningitis or epiglottitis, a potentially life-threatening throat infection. A new vaccine on the market can protect children, and the Health Unit is urging parents to use it. But according to Dr. John Stevenson, many parents are holding off, waiting until other vaccines are licensed at the end of the year. This is because the current vaccine is only effective on children over 18 months old and it's expensive. But the longer they put off getting the child immunised against these and other infections, including diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough and polio, the greater the risks the child faces. Dr. John Stevenson says it's important parents act now.
For children between the ages of 18 months and 5 years, if they attend centres where children of that age collect, like daycare centres, then I think it is worth seriously considering immunising their child, given the fact that it may cost them up to $40 for the immunisation.
It's hoped the government will eventually bear the cost of the new vaccines.
At Scone today, almost a public holiday atmosphere prevailed. Clear skies and a brisk temperature made for a perfect day at the races. From the toddlers to our more senior citizens, the region's racegoers were at the track in droves, creasing the palate with their own special blends, champagne for some, while Australia's very own frothy brew was preferred by others. And at Scone today, a very important person, Stan Wicks, a farmer of some 61 years standing in the area, voted to be the VIP of Horse Week, and it was a big surprise for Stan.
Yeah, I was a bit, but it all happened about 12 months ago when one of my friends said, I'm going to nominate you for VIP next year. And I didn't think I'd get it, so it didn't matter.
And Stan even had a tip for the cup.
I'm going to tip a boulder, supplement.
Time for the Equimex Scone Cup, and our fielder's tips to Gary Harley was keen on the top weight, Be Happy.
Last night, police and the SES concentrated the search for Glenn Andrew Botfield in the area behind the Prince of Wales Park. The river was dragged and the bank searched. A pair of jeans was found this morning and identified as belonging to Mr. Botfield. Police are now appealing to the public for help. Mr. Botfield is 180 centimetres tall with an olive complexion, thick brown hair and brown eyes. He was last seen wearing a plum-coloured jacket with green stripes.
Like any other 4-year-old, Melanie Schlegel loves toys. But for Melanie, these toys are more than fun. They're therapy. She is one of about 120 children suffering from cerebral palsy who attend the Stewart Centre. But providing the special toys and other facilities at the centre is costly, about $750,000 a year.
A large proportion is raised by fundraising here and elsewhere, and unfortunately only a very small percentage of which is provided by government.
How to attract more government funding was just one of the topics discussed at the conference. Representatives of the Spastic Centre, volunteers and parents came together to swap information about dealing with cerebral palsy and raising the vitally needed funds.
The keenest participants set off from Maxville's historic Star Hotel at first light, followed at a more civilised hour by dozens of walkers keen to complete the 26-kilometre trek. Messages of encouragement were dotted along the way, and although it was a long walk to quench their thirst, there were drinks all round at the hotel affectionately known as the pub with no beer. Organisers estimate the participants raised about $24,000. The money will go to the Heart Foundation.
Paul Allardyce had a hand in the first try for Waratah, a good ball to Gary Fairhurst who made the break. Ross Conlon was backing up and the Cheetahs were in. More points came shortly after when nippy 5/8 Allardyce made a 4-pointer from nothing, scooting from the play the ball to cross. The Butcher boys were trying hard but errors kept them at bay, while at the other end the dancing feet of Darren Slocky made them pay for slack defence, and once again the Waratah side was in. The Tars stretched their lead to 12 points when Russell and captain coach Craig Higgins sent big second rower Anthony Shannon on a path for the try line, and it looked all over. But Central Charlestown found something to level and capitalise on this earlier try to Troy Reid, who handled twice in the movement before racing through some paper-thin defence to score. At the Broadmeadow Basketball Stadium, the Hunter Valley Taekwondo Open Championships were held today, with the Black Belts putting on a super display of non-contact karate, one of the many divisions decided this afternoon. Along with the non-contact section, full contact and semi-contact also form part of the proceedings. 130 martial artists attended the titles from all over New South Wales, honing their skills for state and national titles still to come. It must be true. If a lady is feeling depressed or off colour, a trip to the hairdressers can do wonderful things. But despite the chance to be pampered, Rachel's mind was firmly fixed on getting back out on the court as quickly as possible. Rachel, now ranked 32 in the world, is suffering from a stress fracture of the second metatarsal, or in layman's terms, a small crack in the second toe of the left foot. And it couldn't have come at a worse time for the Merryweather lass, with the French Open and Wimbledon Championships coming up.
When I went over there, I was hitting the ball really well, and I had a couple of good wins, and if I would have had some good feet on me, I would have done even better. So it is disappointing because the French is the big tournament to play, and it's worth a lot of points if you do well, and it's just very disappointing, yeah.
Out of action for at least 3 weeks, Rachel will undergo an upper body program with Knights conditioner Joe Dunnage, and at this stage she is still confident of representing Australia at the Olympics and also in the Federation Cup.
I'll be doing a lot of training to work around that, and if I can't make Wimbledon, I'll definitely make the Olympics, so that's the main thing, yeah.
Normally competing for business, 11 of Newcastle's top watering holes are getting together to sponsor the 10-event card at Broadmeadow tomorrow, further enhancing their already large commitment to racing.
We've always been associated with racing, and this is the inaugural meeting, of course, in conjunction with Newcastle Jockey Club, the group of 11 hoteliers concerned, with the trophy being put up by Carlton United Breweries.
And the publicans are having their own little battle. Each hotel has drawn a horse in each event. The leading point scorer at the end of the day will take home the cup.
Well, it'll be very fiercely contested, I can tell you that. Although the draw is from the hat, all of us are very keen and eager and are watching the horses that we've drawn, and we're all in it to win it, I can tell you that.
The Newcastle Jockey Club are delighted with the promotion.
Well, we've got a good 10-race program. One race is the Newcastle Hoteliers Rocket Plate, which is the main event of the day. But I think Max Lees will go very close with Zoa. Vic Thompson's got the top weight King's Ransom. It'll be hard to beat. I think they'll fight out for the Quinella.
Our tipster Gary Harley is of the same opinion. The speedy mare Zoa, with only 51 kilograms to carry, should prove too difficult to run down on her home track.
Shooters claim the new laws were framed in secrecy and rushed through Parliament. No longer is self-protection a valid reason to own a firearm. Police can now confiscate guns belonging to those involved in domestic disputes. And from 1997, owning some military-style weapons will be illegal. It's all fallout from the Stratfield massacre, but shooters are fighting back. They're gunning for Premier Greiner, and the target is the seat of Maitland, the state's most vulnerable seat, one held by Liberal MP Peter Blackmore.
Well, that's the sort of areas they would look at, where there's such vulnerable seats at the present time.
But Mr Blackmore has other things on his mind at the moment. He's in Sydney, facing a preliminary ICAC investigation into property deals. Australia's newest political party could hold its first rally soon in Cessnock.
It's been mentioned, but we would hope that we can get some sense into some of these people that formulate this legislation and the possibility of repealing some of it long before we need to do all of that.
And it says it will not be a one-issue wonder.
Education and transport, they'll have views on them, and they'll certainly be instrumental in formulating better legislation in some of those areas, I'm sure.
The Shooters Party is yet to choose a local candidate. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
Fair enough. But like I said, that's all.
Knights boss Mike Armstrong was going through the league's rule book today, arguing his side had been unfairly treated.
I'll be recommending that the board appeal the decision of the New South Wales Rugby League and question their assessment.
The Knights' $128,000 slug was second only to Parramatta. The Eels up for $145,000 plus a $90,000 fine. 9 clubs in total have been cited to pay out for breaching last year's limit. The Knights argue a last-minute reduction in their salary cap for 91 made it too tough to reduce contracts. Instead, they were reorganised, with players also paid for their services off the football field, jobs such as giving training camps. Mike Armstrong says these fees should not be added to players' on-the-field salaries.
What we have is a difference in interpretation.
Some good news for the club with the upcoming clash against Balmain. This Friday night, the Knights expect to reach a rather special milestone. The 13,756th person coming to the ground will be the 1 millionth fan to watch the Knights at home in the Winfield Cup.
This is the home of rugby league in Australia. Let no one tell you any differently.
The Knights have been averaging about 20,000 people per game for its 5 years. Only Brisbane's crowds come near, and they have more than double the population to draw from. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Brian Gilligan is the man who, from June 15th, will head the EPA in the state's north, an area stretching from Wyong to the Queensland border and east of the Dividing Range. Mr Gilligan says it's vital the government assumes greater responsibility for environmental protection and management. Although officially announced by Environment Minister Tim Moore only today, Mr Gilligan has already got a tap on the local environment issues.
In the case of the North Coast, the major issues are water quality ones rather than air quality. In the Hunter region specifically, it's more of a mix, particularly in the lower Hunter. There are major air quality concerns.
But Mr Gilligan has one fear about the job.
Is the combination of arrogance on the part of industry and some professionals, I regret to say, in the environment field, and self-righteousness on the part of some people within the community groups.
Eliminating this will be a priority. Mr Gilligan will now step down from his position of chairman at the Shortland Wetlands Centre, but then there's his position as a director of the Hunter Water Corporation.
There is clearly the potential for a significant conflict of interest.
Whether Mr Gilligan resigns or remains, he says liaison at a senior level between the EPA and the Water Corporation is imperative. As Regional Director, Mr Gilligan will control a staff of around 25, divided between offices based in Newcastle and Grafton. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Curry Workers Club's been turned into a shrine. The locals paying homage to their heroes. It's hard to believe a club which has churned out 10 league legends hasn't won a premiership since 1945. How's this for a roll call? Johnny Sattler, South's legendary hitman. Eddie Lumsden, another hard man who marched with the Saints during their 11-year reign. Manly's Bill Hamilton. And the most recent Curry Kangaroo, Jeff Masterman. Masterman played with Eastern Suburbs from 1980 through to 85, but he's a Curry boy through and through.
Just running on the Curry ground, it's a great feeling, and playing with the blokes you grew up with, and great mates. And as we said before, it's a very proud club, so they've got some good supporters.
Jeff Roach holds the club record, 256 games between 1971 and 81.
I played 11 years with Curry and never got to the grand final. Always happened to get to the grand final and just missing out. So yeah, it was a fair bit disappointing for me.
Jim Roberts is Curry's self-appointed historian. He was darting from the scrum base back in the golden years.
Well, I was lucky enough to be able to play with them, Eddie Lumsden and Dennis Booker and Rishi Duncan. So I feel pretty lucky being able to be associated with those blokes.
Another special guest this weekend, Federal Land Transport Minister Bob Brown. He's a former Bulldogs administrator. More than 400 people will crowd the club on Saturday night. Tickets have all been sold, so the stage is set for plenty of carousing in the coalfields. Locked away in a Carrington warehouse, they've toiled for 6 months. Now they've got just 4 weeks to complete their task. Artworks for the workers. Works which, like the club itself, symbolise Newcastle's rise from the ashes of the earthquake. Brigitte Hansen, John Cliff and Catherine Grushka are the minds behind the masterpieces. The centrepiece is a massive tiled mural, 15 square metres, 481 tiles, painstakingly painted, depicting Newcastle's sporting way of life. The tiles came back from the kiln this morning, the tissue taken off with trepidation.
Mixed reaction. Of course, I think the thing with any artist, when you first get work up, it's a bit of disappointment because it's not as good as you wanted it to be straight away, but then on reflection we'll be happy with it, I think, overall.
Yeah, when you paint it, it looks very pastel-y, and when it comes through fully glazed like that, it's so rich, and your eyes just have to get used to it. It's new.
The Australia Council threw in $12,000 under its Art in Public Places program. Money sunk into a swimming sequence, a selection of metre-high ceramic pots, and what they call a fabric installation. The artists hope the works will become tourist attractions in their own right.
In the last 4 years, 8 underground mines in the state's northern region have closed. Bloomfield officially locks the gates for the final time in 2 weeks. Leamington No. 1 finishes up July 1st. Union Secretary Ron Land agrees some mines weren't viable, but all avenues to increase efficiency through restructuring have been exhausted.
We've met every request for restructuring that the government and the industry has placed on us. We've seen our people take reductions in manning, we've seen them take reductions in bonuses. There is just no more reducing to do.
So now they're at desperation point. Of the region's 10,500 coal miners, 400 are on the retrench list. That figure looks set to almost double within the next 2 months. The union's beef isn't with the coal companies, it's the federal government they're targeting.
The problem lies solely with the federal government. They continue to ignore our calls to intervene and ensure that these companies sell the coal for a price that they can make a profit for.
Unions want 3 things: a resource control board established so that if a company pulls out of a mine, it'll be kept open. They want severance and retrenchment pay entitlements guaranteed, and if both these fail, financed retraining packages. Next week, 140 representatives will travel by bus to Canberra. On Tuesday night, wearing cap lights, they'll march around Parliament House. On Wednesday morning, they'll reconvene on the steps of Parliament for a rally. Exactly what's on the agenda for that day, Mr Land remained reluctant to reveal. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Former trade union leader Laurie Carmichael is now chairman of the Employment and Skills Formation Council and has spent the last 6 months compiling his report into the education changes required. The crux of his findings is that jobs no longer exist for people to just slot into after leaving school early. People are encouraged to stay at school longer and they must be provided with more relevant training for a more mature labour market.
We've got to find a new system that will embrace everybody, but embrace them in a fashion that meets industry's needs for the future.
Mr Carmichael advocates a 9-year program in 3 stages to establish precisely the type of skills training required. The emphasis would be on vocational rather than general education, but be flexible enough to allow for future changes in workplace requirements. What is needed is more coordination between schools, the workplace and TAFE colleges, and universities would also be included in the national scheme.
70% of all those who participate in universities in this country do so for direct vocational purposes. And so consequently the type of learning that I've been talking about and is described in my report is equally applicable to them as it is elsewhere.